Welcome friends, welcome students, welcome to this very special session on caste, class and gender. Right? We have in the studio today Dr. Archana Singh, who is going to discuss the three dimensions of social stratification in great detail with you. But before I ask Archana to speak to you, I want to explain to you the broad perspective or the broad theoretical framework within which caste, class and gender find place in sociological or anthropological literature. Okay, now caste, class and gender can be treated as forms of social stratification. But then what is social stratification, so to say? Social stratification refers to the division of people into different categories. That's a simple, very, very simple definition of the term social stratification. Now, social stratification subsumes within itself two concepts or two ideas, and these are difference and inequality. So we distinguish between something which is called difference and something which is called inequality. Now, difference refers to the basic difference, or when you divide people or events into categories but do not assign to them weightage, they are treated as differences. So, boys and girls, now there is a sexual difference, right? So, a girl is born, a boy is born. These are sex differences. These are just differences to begin with. When we start assigning weightage, when we start assigning value or importance to one or the other category and not to the others, or we start assigning differential weightage, then difference turns into inequality. Inequality then refers to imbalance in the ability or the resources to meet a challenge. Right? So the simple difference between the sexes becomes inequality when we start saying that boys are more important, or when we start assigning greater importance to boys and lesser importance to girls. Then we say that there is inequality. Right? Inequality has been identified as of two kinds: natural inequality and social inequality. Now, within social inequality comes the concepts of caste, class, gender, and the theoretical framework within which these concepts can be understood or have been understood in both sociology and anthropology are primarily three. Right? The first is the functionalist perspective, which treats stratification or categories into which people are divided as in terms of the contribution they make to the maintenance of social order and stability. Right? This is the functionalist perspective. The Marxian perspective focuses on the divisive rather than integrative aspects of stratification. So we remember that Marx talked about class consciousness, he talked about class solidarity, and he talked about class conflict. And if you recall, Marx divided society, capitalist societies, into two classes: the bourgeois and the proletariat. The third perspective, and I assume that all this you probably know, you've gone through all this material before. The third is the Weberian perspective, which treats class in terms of the market situation. And Weber divided class into four categories: the propertied upper class, the property-less white collar workers, the petty bourgeois, and the manual working class. He also brought in the concepts of power, of prestige. Right? Now, against this backdrop, I will now request Archana to take over and explain to you how caste, class and gender get interrelated and integrated as part of social reality.
Thank you, Neeta. You have already given the introduction to the topic and explained what is the difference between natural inequality and social inequality. And here we are going to discuss about social inequality rather than the natural inequality, and how these two terms have been defined in sociology and explained for further analysis. Now, gender, caste and class. You have already learned a lot about the social stratification, which is caste and which is class, in different other forums. Here we are going to link how caste and class are linked with the issue of gender. Now, within the broad social hierarchy of caste and class, gender is a system of social stratification which cuts across all social stratification. It is a stratification based on difference, and the difference is between the two sexes, as mentioned earlier, male and female. But the difference of male and female is not just at the level of natural physiological difference. It veers towards the sociological issue of how male and female roles and statuses are perceived by society, and how they vary from one region to another, one community to another, and from one period of time to another. It is a dynamic process, and as a process, it is both plural, it is divided, and it is inherently unstable, and it changes from region to region based on ethnicity and concept of class. So all these issues are so well enmeshed and interlinked with each other that often it was not very clear to people who were part of that life. So we did not understand that there is a kind of difference which exists on the basis of the cultural difference, customary differences, and we took it as a part of society and culture. But it was, since this is an issue which is very recent in a historical sense, and not more than a century ago people ever spoke about the gender problem or gender issues. And in academia, this intellectuals have conceptualized and reconceptualized the issue of gender only in the last 3 decades. Now, when we talk about gender, gender is something which is understood socially and culturally, and the way it is defined by different scholars, it is something which is in a process, and this process is both at the individual level as well as at the process, the larger social processes which influences the social institutions in society. Then some of the factors which affect the understanding of gender issues. These are the factors which are both material as well as ideological. Ideological factors are domestic factors, ideological domestic factors, religious beliefs, customs and rituals which are there in society. They reinforce a basic inequality between men and women, and they create these inequalities are internalized by women themselves through the process of socialization, through education, and material factors are such that inheritance of property, inheritance of name, and many other factors which are related with the status of the woman is dependent on different cultures and the way they have been understood by the society itself. And in this sense, the significant role in sustaining this system of gender is carried on from one generation to another, and the reproductive powers of women is exploited or controlled and constrained by the men in the society. Now, let me explain what is gender. Gender, as I have given the simple explanation earlier, is something which is one of the perhaps most oldest and enduring sources of social differentiation. As I said earlier, it is something which has been only recently brought to the critical notice of scholars, academics, intellectuals, sociologists and activists, and it is not something which was there earlier or perceived as a major topic of concern for different scholars in the past. It has become an issue lately because of several political reasons. So, in a political sense also, gender has become a very critical issue which is being addressed by many people, both politicians as well as sociologists, other thinkers, philosophers, economists. And gender roles are something which encompasses social division and cultural distributions, distinctions between men and women, as well as the characteristics which are commonly associated with the idea of femininity and masculinity. Now, we all know that females are viewed as a different type of social beings from males, because there are certain characteristics which are socially attached to these qualities. The quality of femininity and quality of masculinity, it's not natural, but it has been imposed by the society, the culture, the customs and the values of different communities and cultures. Now, when we talk about gender, we are also very concerned about the fact that gender is something, an issue which is interrelated with many other issues. It cannot be abstracted from all these other factors. And we have to look at the gender relations within a wider social relations, how it cuts across caste, cultures, race, ethnicity, and sometimes even religious values and beliefs. They determine the kind of gender relation that exists, and class matters very deeply. These values are deeply rooted in the culture of any society which we study, and since they are so deep rooted, it is sometimes very difficult to extract and understand one kind of a gender relation present in one society and compare it with another. So all these things are basically also associated with the idea of sexuality. The female sexuality is at the base of this whole ideology of gender studies, and meanings of masculinity and femininity do vary from region to region and class to class, community to community. Gender does not replace sex, however, because sex is a biological difference between men and women. Gender identities are, as I said earlier, they are plural, they are divided, and they are potentially unstable. Gender always includes the dynamics of ethnicity and class. Now, how is gender different from sex? Sex is the biological difference between men and women, and as such it is universal and found across time and space in all societies. Now, gender, as I said earlier, it is not something which is, although it is related with the idea of male and female, but it is something which is socially determined, socially constructed. Now, since it is socially constructed, it is varying according to different societies, their values, beliefs, customs, rituals and practices, and major the idea behind the formation of that structure. So the social structure itself determines the kind of place the female sex will have in that society, and how the males control the females in that society. So it is the relationship, social relationship between the men and the women are culturally, socially constructed in different societies. This is the difference between the concept of sex and concept of gender in different societies. Now, gender can therefore be defined as a notion that offers a set of frameworks within which the social and the ideological construction and representation of differences between men and women are expressed and explained. And as per the UNESCO document called The Needs of Women, it gives the International Labour Organization's definition of the difference between sex and gender. This refers to the the social differentiation and relations between men and women, which are learned differences. Now, learning is something which is a social process, which is a part of socialization, part of education of different members of a society. This is not something which happens naturally. It is something which is socially taught. Teaching itself is a social activity, and learning is a process which is therefore socially defined and determined, and therefore it is different in different communities and cultures. So since it is a learned kind of behavior, the gender itself is something which is absolutely social in nature, sociological in understanding. Now, gender involves the power structure and economic relations within a society. The power structure is how one section dominates over the other, how the basic resources of health, life, everything which determines one's status and lifestyle in society is defined by the social community. The culture of that society is determined. This is how the power structure itself becomes enmeshed in the very whole issue of gender relations in different societies. Now, what is social construction of reality? Social construction of reality is how individual actors, they perceive the reality around them, how they interpret it and explain it. The everyday sense of life, how it is understood by different people in a society, in different societies also, and this makes the reality socially determined, and it is at one level understood by individuals. At another level, it is how the different interest groups and powerful group of people within a society, they defined the relationship and of reality, how they understand the construction of reality in that society. So at both the levels, the idea is basically subjective. At the individual level, it is again a subjective notion, and at the level of different powerful interest groups within a society, then again it is something which is defined by the individuals who are at that level of power. So both the cases, there is a subjective bias in the understanding of social reality. It is in this sense that the interests which are particularly related with groups and classes, it is gender wise explained, and the everyday expressions made which are moral judgments, and how we classify other people according to religion, sex, and these are culturally determined and can be these keep on changing from one period of time to another. Now, gender is a product of such social construction. It is very clear because since gender itself is related with the issue of power, of the relationship of domination, which is culturally defined, politically it is vital, and therefore there are many things which are so enmeshed in society that the gender relation is part of that whole process of the life, living of life itself in different societies. Gender is a product of such social construction, and it is therefore shaped within the given culture and cultural apparatus of society. It is the cultural construction of the masculine and feminine, which is the crucial part of the whole issue of gender. How men are perceived in the society and how women are perceived, their status in society, how they interact with each other, that is socially constructed. Now, so far we have come to this understanding of what is gender, how it is sociological in its understanding and background, how it is understood, and now I'll try to link it with how it is linked with caste itself. You have learned about the concept of caste and how in India caste is considered to be one of the basic features of society, where people are hierarchically placed on the basis of their birth in a certain community, how their certain practices, social practices, customs, values, beliefs, which defines them in places them into different social groups. Varn and Jati are basic to the understanding of caste. How caste has been explained is something which I hope you have already learned. So now I would like to explain how caste is linked with gender. Now the issue of gender is something which is political in nature, as I have already said, and when we try to understand caste and gender, then two things are very important from which perspective we are trying to understand this thing. One is the perspective of the status quo in society. If we want to understand the process of gender construction in a society like, in a caste society like India, then if we follow the status quo, then the way it is there is understood in a very consensual or functional way, as Neeta had already explained. There is another way of looking at caste, and that is in engaging critically with the whole status quo by developing a critique of Indian tradition. Now, when we criticize the way caste has been understood and how it is linked with the stratification and so different ways in which people are stratified in society, within itself, as I said, caste and gender cut across each other. Gender is related with caste in the sense that the purity of the caste, the race, and the very question of the sexuality of woman is very crucial in maintaining the purity and status of the caste is significant. Now, when we are talking about gendering of caste, we basically are talking in the arena of sexuality, women's sexuality, how it is constrained, how it is controlled and determined in different caste communities. More so in the upper caste in classes of Indian society. Upper castes are very conscious about their purity and their racial the background, because they have more stakes in the material assets of the society. And it is found that the whole practice of hypergamy, endogamy, hypergamy is where the woman marries from lower caste to the upper caste only. She is not allowed to marry anybody below her caste, and sometimes within her own caste or a caste above her own caste. That is the range in which a woman is allowed to marry. And endogamy is marriage within one's own caste communities or one's own jati. these practices, they determine how uh, how the gender is understood, in the sense that the woman's sexuality is being part of the process of maintaining this racial quality, purity of the society. Now, as I have explained, this the whole idea is that woman is only a womb. The woman's womb is like the soil, rich soil, where the man's seed is grown. So woman is only considered to be as a receptacle, and her purity is ensured by this marriage pattern, within which she is allowed to cohabit with other men, and this will ensure the the paternity of the child. So we find that the rules are much more strict in the upper caste than in the lower castes, because they have higher stakes.
Just a moment, Archana.
Yes,
At this
Geeta.
stage, I really want to intervene and add on to what you are saying. A very interesting example. You said the woman is treated in most societies as a receptacle
Yes.
of the seed of the man, and it is so true, because even among the Santals, which is a tribe in the Jharkhand, West Bengal, Orissa belt, the term for a barren woman and the term for a barren piece of land, a barren tree, a barren cow is the same. You see, so you see how the barrenness and how the fertility of a woman is linked with a broader, with nature itself, and in a very, very broad perspective. The major reason why Archana just said it's important for a woman to marry within her own caste, the reason is that the basis for marrying within one's caste is to maintain continuity of the traditional occupation. Please remember that the castes or the jatis were divided on the basis of specific occupations. Now, if a woman marries within her own caste, it ensures the continuity of the traditional occupation. If a woman from another caste joins, then the whole system would rupture, right? So that's what I wanted to do.
Thank you, Neeta. I think you have given a very good example, and that explains what I was trying to describe earlier about the relationship between caste and gender. And in that sense, the whole rigmarole of caste rules and regulation regarding marriage, caste is itself very closely linked with the kinship pattern and marriage pattern in any region of India. And you are all aware about how one jati group is not allowed to take women from any other jati. But slowly the boundaries and the groups of intermarriage are breaking down and dissolving with each other, considering different new rules are being interpreted and involved. But before coming to that, I would like to explain another aspect of caste and gender, and that is the ritual aspect. Rituals of any society, they are basically the construction, social constructions within which rituals and customs are defined, and these explain how the difference between men and women are perceived in different societies. For example, Noor Yalman in 1963, he explained about the Sri Lankan Singhalese, the Kandians, and how in their community they are also basically having caste society. So within their community, there are different rituals for girls for their ear piercing, which is very marked, and it defines the status of the girl child in their society. And there is another ritual which is linked with the maturity or coming of age of the boy, and how these are again reflecting upon the status of the girl and boy within their community. So rituals itself are tools to explain this kind of gender constructions. And in South India we find that during the first menstruation of a girl child, there is an elaborate ceremony, and after that also, whenever there is the girl is menstruating, she is confined to a different room or a hut where her food is specially given. This is basically to protect the girl from the powerful forces of demons and devils, and also to maintain the cleanliness and pollution, remove the pollution from the main house where food is cooked, where worship is done. So many things are there in society which are expressing this gender construction through different forms of rituals, customs, beliefs. So we find that gender and caste are very closely linked in with each other because of this whole control over the sexuality of the woman, and how the purity of the race of the community is maintained by restraining the mobility of the woman herself. Now, this restraint of mobility and control over the sexuality of women is not something which is constant. It is slowly changing with time, and in contemporary society we find there are different other ways in which this relationship, the gender construction goes on. And although caste restrictions are dissolving slowly, but the relationship, the power domination between men and women remains in a way as per society's norms same, because inheritance of property, the economic relationships, women are coming more and more towards employment and towards the urban job market. But in terms of their status, their position is not equal, and that is being understood by other factors like the employment avenues are different. There is different wage given to men and women, especially in the unorganized sector. And there are many issues in the class differences such that whenever there is social mobility in different societies, the women as such are removed from the economic structure or economic forces of production. They are removed because that gives a higher status and honor to the men. In fact, with more mobility, even the men sometimes remove themselves from direct labor. In fact, they take up the task of supervisory tasks, which is seen in the rural areas. And Professor Andre Bitte has described this whole caste class nexus and how the role and status of women is changing from the earlier caste societies to a new structure of society where class values are defining her role in the society itself. The concept, the Pativrata Nari concept, which was very prominent earlier, is still there in nearly all the caste classes, and it cuts across different regions and classes as well. Something which is reflective upon the kind of status the woman enjoys in Indian society is very closely related with the kind of class she belongs to or the caste she belongs to. And another sociologist, Kathleen Gough, she studied caste, kinship and marriage patterns, and found that the processes of social forces, the formation of mode of production and relations of production, they reflected the similarity between the two structures. Therefore, what she has arrived at is that there is a close link between the caste, class and gender, and it is something which is understood in both the ways. So she talked about Varna system and Dajmani system. They both are indicative of that kind of interaction, interlinkages between the concept of caste, the class and gender relations that is found in different societies. And in the new classes that are coming up in different societies, we find that the status of woman is, instead of improving, it is in many ways going down, especially in the lower castes. And there are cases of instead of upward mobility, there's a downward mobility for women, especially in lower castes, where when they started to be mobile, they followed the process of Sanskritization, adopted the values, beliefs, customs of upper caste. So what led to what was the byproduct of this process was that they removed their women from the economic structure of relations. They brought them to the domestic area, and there was more domestication of women, and as per that, their status became even worse than what it used to be earlier. Now, let me explain how gender and this class are interlinked. In India, even Kathleen Gough was talking about this whole idea that caste incorporates class and class incorporates caste in India, and this is very clear from how she has interlinked the forces of production and productive relations in society with the caste pattern, the marriage pattern and the kinship pattern in societies. When we are talking about caste and class and gender, then there is another issue which is very significant. These were the forces of change that were brought about by the colonial rulers in India. When they came, they disturbed the earlier pattern and brought in many changes which were related with, for example, the zamindar. They brought new land rules, the permanent settlement brought a new kind of class in society. They created the zamindari system in several areas of Bihar, Bengal, UP, and there a class of people emerged who were intermediary classes, and they did not have give any input to the production process as such, but they were supervising the agriculture, and there was a lot of disturbance in the industrial developments that were taking place at that time. Even in terms of economy, Indian economy was going down because it was not being able to deal with the kind of changes that were taking place in the society. So in that whole process of social change, gender issues were such that women had very little place in society itself. And I think here we can just mention that Mahatma Gandhi's social movement, the independence movement, was the first place where women were given a very prominent role, and he was instrumental in bringing out women as national leaders and those who could walk with the men in society and bring about a social change in the system of society that was existing at that time, and taking part in the whole social process. Now, this is at this level. When we talk about the regional variation in caste, class and gender, we find that there is a marked difference between one community, one caste and one region to another. For example, status of women is generally poor in most of the caste societies, especially the upper caste. But when we come to the northeast and find that communities like the tribes like Garos and Garos and Khasis of Meghalaya, they are basically matriarchal societies where women inherit property. So here the status of woman is generally higher. And there is a saying in these communities that war and violence is part of the male world, whereas property and children are the domain of the woman. So it defines a kind of understanding in those societies where women have a very significant role, and they are playing a different kind of enjoying a different kind of status from other communities found in India. So it is not that status of women is equal everywhere in India. It is varying from one region to another, one community to another, depending on the different kind of way that culture and the relations of gender relations are defined in those societies. Now, coming to other regional variations, I find that there are many things which are reflective of this variation. When we study the data regarding the role of women in different sectors of employment, we find that most of the women, the percentage of women cultivators and agricultural laborers has not only increased, but it is the maximum in the agriculture sector, and that sector employs women to the maximum. This is given in the census report, and the census of 1981 to 91. It is also found that statistics, the Government of India statistics of the Human DGE and T Ministry of Labor, it shows that women are employed mostly in the private sector, enterprises, rather than the public sector. Again, when we come to this whole women's sex ratio itself also determines the kind of status the woman is enjoying in different societies. In India itself, largely the sex ratio is very poor for girls, and I'll just give you examples of some of them. This is as per the 1991 census. In Punjab, the sex ratio, which is females per 1000 males, is 874. In Delhi, it is 821. In Uttar Pradesh, it is 898. In West Bengal, it is 934. And Karnataka, it is 964. Andhra Pradesh 978, and perhaps in Kerala it is the only highest sex ratio is 1058. After that, only Pondicherry has 1001. These are only some of the statistics which I am quoting, and the idea behind this is to explain how in different regions the sex ratio reflects the kind of status the woman is enjoying in those societies, and that is the basis in which women and their gender roles are defined, and the kind of health and other benefits which they enjoy is distributed in those societies. Thank you.
Thank you, Archana. I think 2 or 3 points stand out in the course of this talk that we have had. One is that women's value is defined by their reproductive abilities more than by their productive abilities. You can interpret bride wealth in that sense as a compensation to bride's parents or her kinspersons for the productive and reproductive rights of the women. That is why you realize, when you understand this, that you will also understand how and why patriarchal upper castes have tightened both caste and gender division as they consolidate their economic supremacy. So what we finally come to understand is that caste, class and gender are integrated in a way that they appear as inseparable categories, and they are articulated through beliefs values, rituals, customary rights through division of labor. Well, I think you would have understood and benefited from this talk. Thank you.